Thank you both for being here with us right now. Devin, let's start with you. Tanea's report here talked a little bit about just how much interest is being driven through crypto, not just Bitcoin. How exactly is that translating into corporate performance for names like a Coinbase or a Robinhood?
Hey, good morning, Dom. So we're seeing it in several factors. So one, you're seeing significantly more volume. So their volumes kind of post-election versus pre-election for Coinbase specifically are up about 3x. So just tremendous kind of near-term activity in the space. And Robinhood, I would say, is seeing kind of similar types of activity in crypto. And, that's great. We want to see more volume near term. But I think what this really does is unlocks a lot of innovation that's been held back in the space, because really crypto is not about the casino and trading, coins back and forth all day long, even though right now there is a lot of speculation. I think it's really about the opportunity to do more in payments and remittance and stable coins and Web3. And Coinbase is going to be a leader in integrating that. And Robinhood's now going to be able to do a lot more. So something that's 10% of Robinhood's business, I could see being 25 to 50% over the next few years. So really a huge opportunity, and price also is going to drive interest. And we see a lot of factors that can still drive prices in crypto quite a bit higher here, including the strategic reserve, Bitcoin ETFs, and now the tens of billions of dollars in new capital coming in from institutions that were previously held out.
Devin, if I could just follow up really quickly on that, because we're showing the charts of Coinbase, Robinhood, and the moves that we've already seen, even just since the election. From a fundamental analyst standpoint, how much of that upside is already being priced into these stocks? How much more can they run, given that construct?
Yeah, so we've been bullish, but I actually think there's a fair amount more to run, and I think you can support it fundamentally. So with Coinbase, just to throw a couple numbers, they are run rating about $6 billion of revenue this year. We see them over the next year or two, just on kind of some of these new aspects getting unlocked, getting to north of $10 billion of revenues, which is about $12 of earnings power. That's not a best case scenario. We think over the next probably 4 to 5 years, you're looking at north of $15 billion in revenue for Coinbase, which is over $20 of earnings. So you start to talk about $20 of earnings, and a price here doesn't seem too extreme. Same thing, Robinhood, again, just volumes are up materially. They're adding new coins, but really the big story is going to be, what do they do in the tokenization of traditional assets? They're buying an exchange. What do they do with staking? They're not doing much with stable coins. So there's just huge opportunity because some of these firms have been held back. And then you kind of keep going down the path. Firms like Schwab that we cover are going to be entering the space. So it's just unlocking huge new pools of capital to come into the industry.
Okay, Sarah, what's interesting about this, and Devin brings up an interesting point about how the ecosystem could possibly grow. We recently saw Robinhood go out and buy Trade PMR, which is a custody services platform for investment advisors. It kind of speaks a little bit to how these things are all growing, and that Schwab may not be the only game in town going forward. From an investing standpoint, what exactly is the momentum like in that kind of environment where ecosystems are growing? Who become potential targets?
I think there are a lot of potential targets, especially with a new administration that's likely to take a much kinder view of M&A. I'm in some really interesting names that have generated a lot of buzz, like Falcon X, the crypto prime brokerage, Gemini, the crypto marketplace. I think a lot of those exchanges, a lot of those sort of infrastructure plays that people have been building for years and years and kind of forgot about for the last couple of years in the larger market are going to be getting calls from big acquirers.
If that's the case, Sarah, how exactly does the momentum play out, given the fact that we've seen this massive surge in not just Bitcoin, but all of these smaller coins as well? What exactly is the investing angle if you are trying to look not necessarily at meme coins, but playing this broader push in cryptocurrencies overall?
Yeah, meme coins are dangerous. You can make a lot, but you can lose your shirt. I think that where people are going to be looking, one, continues to be Bitcoin. I know it feels a little boring at this point, but, there's still room to run there. And I also think that you're going to see people broaden that out, look at things like stable coins, and even into some of the products like the ETFs that are on the market where you're getting exposure to the underlying coin for institutionals or people who, for whatever reason, can't hold crypto themselves.
All right. And Sarah, we're going to give one last word to each of you guys. Sarah, I'll start with you. if you look at this, do you feel as though there is an allocation aspect for some of these types of cryptocurrencies?
I think that there are people who have not yet gotten in the game who want to get in the game. I think that there's a lot of institutional money on the sidelines that's been waiting to see what this new administration would bring, because the Biden administration hasn't been the kindest to crypto. And I think that, this is really crypto's third act. We have a lot of bad actors in jail now, and it's time to really see crypto come into its own.
And Devin, we'll give you that last word as well.
Yeah.
Do you think allocation will help drive more upside for some of the companies that you cover?
Yeah, it's one of the most important factors here. Doing this for over 20 years, I always say follow the flows, and the flows are still coming, and we're early days. So the ETFs, Bitcoin ETFs, we have research out saying $220 billion of assets are coming into those over the next 3 years. If there is a strategic reserve, that could be hundreds of billions of dollars of assets into Bitcoin. And then if you think about just all these other crypto tokens that are, we've been uncertain about, are they securities, are they not? That's going to be tens of billions of dollars of new capital coming in, both into the tokens, but also just into investing in the space to innovate. So absolutely, the flows are critical, and we think we're still in the early days of that shift that's happening because of this regime change.